People are moving to Texas and Florida and Tennessee, Republican states, because why? They have opportunity. There's lower taxes, less regulation, better job opportunities. People are voting with their feet. And how do you change that if you're the Biden administration when you don't want Republican states to have more voting strength and more electoral votes? How do you change that? Well, you make the Republican states less successful. And the way they're doing that is bringing in illegal immigrants that cause higher crime rates. That's a cost socially. And then we have to pay for all this. So economically, we're being impacted because we're having to pay for education now because we're required to do that, healthcare, and other costs associated with this illegal immigration. And so they're damaging us economically and making it less likely that we're going to be successful with our other policies of low taxes, less regulation.
Hey folks, as goes Texas, so does America. And I just moved here, so we are not going to let Texas go blue. We will not do that. I will do everything in my power to help fight that battle because I think it is just that important. The border crisis is not just here in Texas. It's not a problem that is just far, far away. It is a problem for every single American. You guys have seen it, whether I've been on Sean Hannity showing you from the ground what is happening in Chicago, in San Diego, in Denver, in Philadelphia. I can go on and on and on, or from our Dark Wars Border podcast, or here at the Sarah Carter Show with Radio America. I have shown you over and over again how this is your problem as well. This is something we can't solve if we're not paying attention to it and we're not taking care of it. You saw what happened in Israel. God help us. God help us. This is in your backyard, and the cartels are bringing people across that don't care about our laws, that do not care about our culture, and that do not put our nation first. And we've seen that. We've seen that all over television displayed this past week. Open borders means every global conflict becomes an internal American issue. I have Attorney General from Texas, Ken Paxton, on the show today, and we are going to dive deep into all the aspects of the border crisis and the legal system, which has recently been weaponized against him. But first, donors' trust. According to a recent Fidelity charitable report, Planned Parenthood, listen to this, was the 6th most popular nonprofit among Fidelity charitable account holders last year. That's horrible. That makes me feel sick to my stomach. 6th out of nearly 200,000 unique charities. Does that upset you? If it does, and it upsets you as much as it upsets me, it is not too late to roll your charitable dollars over to a giving account provider that shares your values. I want you to visit donorstrust.org/Sarah. That is donorstrust.org/Sarah to learn more. Request an information packet and you will soon receive a free copy of their donor prospectus. Roll over your giving to Donors Trust so you can actually help expectant mothers and families in crisis. That is the right thing to do. Simplify your giving with the flexibility, privacy, and tax savings of a donor-advised fund. Visit donorstrust.org/Sarah to receive your free copy of their donors prospectus. That's donorstrust.org/Sarah, S-A-R-A, to discover how you can use a giving account and help expectant mothers in your community. Simplify, increase, and protect your donations with Donors Trust. Go to donorstrust.org/Sarah, S-A-R-A. I'm so grateful to finally have Attorney General Ken Paxton back on the show. Obviously, Attorney General, you were the recipient of a weaponized gag order, which appears to be happening more and more frequently to conservatives that believe in putting America first, which is amazing. It's like so incredible. And how, and not just by the left, but by the establishment, let's just call them rhinos, but the establishment. This is something that I think is going to be written about in the history books, the way our government has changed and shifted and become weaponized. So I am grateful for your exoneration and the fact that you can now come on the Sarah Carter Show and speak freely as an American with First Amendment rights.
Well, let me just say thank you for having me back. I'm very grateful to be back. I'm grateful for how you supported me and let people know you were supporting me. I think that's really what made the difference, because as you said, I couldn't talk. I wasn't allowed to talk. I wasn't allowed to defend myself. And so I was depending on, grassroots Texans, regular people to speak out for me, and people like you to speak out, because I couldn't do it. So I'm convinced that free speech that other people had is what actually saved me, because otherwise, this is there was a political process, and just winning on the law and the facts in a political process doesn't necessarily mean you win.
That's absolutely true. We're watching that right now happen with President Trump, with the indictments against him, 4 separate states targeting him, and the gag order that was recently just imposed on him. And this is what's so incredible to me. And I'm going to ask you this as the Attorney General about the fact that they can impose a gag order on what appears to be the person that is going to win the primary for the Republican Party, for the presidential primary. How has this happened? Has that ever, and if you don't know, you don't need to answer, but has this ever happened in the past? I don't think any presidential candidate has had a gag order put on them, and they basically been shut down from their free speech.
Well, it's happened to me in the past. I had another case that I'm still dealing with from almost 9 years ago, where the judge put a gag order on me. Presumably that gag order is still there, although it's a different judge. So I thought it was very, very wrong, because we're like Trump. I'm in a political process every day. I'm being attacked by the media, as he is. And if you cannot speak out on behalf of yourself, and a judge takes away that right, I don't know. It's the First Amendment, right? So it's right there at the beginning of what the founders viewed as extremely important. And when you're like him and me, when you're in political races and you cannot respond to the attacks, I think that's unconstitutional. I think it's wrong. I suppose it's designed to protect the judge from criticism, but to me, that's not that ruins the American system of free speech and the exercise of that free speech.
I know, and I think what. I agree with you, because I think that this has to do with you being able to defend yourself in public when the rest of the world is coming after you. And I'm not talking about those of us that were standing on the sidelines supporting you, but I'm talking about when the mainstream media that is controlled by your enemies is targeting you, and you can't speak up for yourself, and you can't defend yourself. That's got to be a very lonely place.
It's not just lonely. You're being tried. It's almost like your case is being tried in the public arena, and only one side gets to present their case. And that's exactly what happened in my case. I think it's happening in Trump's case, where the people that came after me are leaking information to the press every day. Then you get hit with these stories that are not true. You can't say they're not true. You don't even have the choice of deciding what to say. And then they're hoping that over a period of months and months of being attacked, that you'll just give up, go away, or that the public will be so like, wow, there's so much stuff. Got to be something true there, right? And that's the way they play this. And then you're just stuck with going to trial with 4 or 5, 6 months of negative press, where you've never been able to defend yourself. And then you've got to hope that the process in court gives you enough to explain how some of it at least isn't true.
Well, and you have to have the ability to defend yourself, and that requires deep pockets when you're going against the state, when you're going against the federal government. You know this. I always think that this is, and then you're preoccupied. You can't really take care of business. You can't take care of the things that you want to take care of, and do the work that needs to be done. I always say this is about election interference. This is about removing people from office that aren't playing ball the way that the establishment wants them to play ball. This is about targeting those people that they feel are going to basically meddle in the middle of their, I say, money-making schemes or plans, in politics. It's like, well, it's true. Look at what's going on in Washington. I think there is this vehement hate towards President Trump. It's quite different than what the public understands. The public only sees, the disinformation campaigns, the weaponization campaigns. What they don't see in Washington is how desperate people like the Bidens and others on the right are to keeping the things the way they are. Washington is a machine that has figured out how to make money for its own machine, and how to take care of its own machine. And the American people are just cogs in that wheel, in my opinion. And they're not respected by these people up in Washington. And for the first time, someone like President Trump comes in and says, you know what? I'm sorry. This is BS. How much did you pay for that rug? What's going on here? What is this black hole of money that's been disappearing over and over and over again into the DOD? Hey, CIA, what's going on over there? Why are we starting this war? Why can't we pull out of that one? And they don't like that. They don't want to hear that. And I think even on the local level here in Texas, I think the same thing. I think, let's talk about all the great work you've done on the border and holding people accountable here in the state of Texas for what's been happening and speaking up for Americans. I can tell you this, everywhere I went in Texas, and I was in Kerr County and I gave a speech, people were praising you. So you had a lot of supporters out here. You might have had the bushes up against you, but there are a lot of people here in Texas that love you, AG, and they were speaking out about that. What do you do now? I mean, you've been exonerated, basically, this acquitted, for, was it 16 articles of impeachment? I mean, was that what they're trying to alleging corruption and stuff? So you've been acquitted of all of that. You're back on the job. What do you do? How do you start? How do you start that up again?
That's a great question. And you're right. It was 4 months where I couldn't do anything else. The part of the problem with the way this is set up, the House leadership knew, as you know, they did this all secretly. It wasn't transparent at all. They didn't want the public to know, and they wanted their own House members to, especially the Republicans, to vote on things that they didn't have much information on, because they knew if the public knew about it, they wouldn't be able to carry the vote. It'd be all Democrats voting against me. So they needed a large number of Republicans. That's why they did it very quick. And then they got them committed to it by a vote. And then once you've taken that vote, you have to defend it, right? Otherwise, what do you say? You say, well, I was stupid and I listened to the House leadership. No, they doubled down. And that's why I am now out campaigning against these Republicans that not only did this to me, and by the way, if they do it to me, there's no limit to who they do it to. They were trying to overturn an election. I had just been sworn in 4.5 months ago. So not only did they do that, but they have supported a speaker that put House Democrats in charge of very powerful committees. They've done nothing to do about the border. They've done nothing to reinstate my power to go after voter fraud. So you're talking about Republicans that are standing against the most fundamental things that will allow Texas to stay free and to have a chance to be a Republican state. The Republican House members have supported a speaker who is supported by the Democrats 100%. That's how he got there. And his ideas come from the Biden administration. These Republicans have stood by him. So we need to win the primaries and take these Republicans out.
Who are they? Let's talk about them. Who are they? Let everybody know.
So there are like 60 of them. So like I've got several of them in my district. Obviously, Dave Phelan is the speaker. I'll be campaigning. He's got an opponent that I think has a really good chance of winning. His numbers, Dave Phelan's numbers are terrible. Andrew Murr in your area, out in the Hill Country, we've got an opponent for him. Even in Collin County, where there are, I think, 5 House members, we've got great Republicans running against guys like Jeff Leach and Matt Shaheen. And we have to win these races, or we are going to lose this state in a matter of a couple of years. And these Republicans are complicit.
Why are they doing this? Why are they doing this? I have an idea. I
can tell you what. I've watched it happen. I was in the House for 10 years. I know what happens. They get down there. They have, most of them have good intentions. They have good motives, but they get swayed by leadership that has other intentions, whether it's power, money, whatever it is, and they get promised committee chairmanships, committee assignments, money, and the speaker takes care of all of that. They don't even need their constituents anymore. They don't need them for money. They don't need them for their assignments and so they think they're important. And so they follow the speaker down this path that leads to destruction, not just for them, but for the entire state of Texas.
Kind of like the Pied Piper, just like
yes,
whistling along right over to the cliff, right?
Yes. Yes, and once they do it once, it gets easier and easier to go down that path and follow a speaker that's being controlled by the Democrats.
You know, I want to talk about what you've been able to do, and you're absolutely right. Texas could easily turn blue if you don't have a strong Republican base. And that terrifies a lot of people here in the state of Texas, especially generational Texans who have been here forever, who really know what is at stake here in the state, and especially for those people that are invested, have businesses, have a role in energy, and especially on the border too. And one of the issues that I hear from a lot of Texans is the border. It's a nightmare. And it is. I'm looking at it. I go down there all the time. AG, I see it. I see it across the country. And I could not believe, but there is this story that was published yesterday in Axios that claimed by using the term open border, conservatives are suggesting that anyone can just get into the U.S. without much of a hassle. But the reality is that the southern border is more fortified than it's ever been. Even if the governor tries to, and he's done, I think Governor Abbott's been trying to fortify that border and been trying to do the best job he can up against whatever he can do. He can't put the National Guard there. They can't shoot at innocent civilians walking over. You hear crazy stuff like that. It's like that can't happen. But the thing is people are coming into the country. People are not properly being vetted. I see it in Chicago when they're sleeping inside police precincts. I see it in San Diego when they're laying in parks in the middle of a neighborhood. And I see people from Chechnya, Russia, China, West Africa, and NGOs there with translators trying to figure out what they're going to do with all these people that have not been properly vetted. How can the media spew out these lies? They're lies. And expect us to just sit back and be like, oh, okay, Axios wrote about that, so it must be true. Oh.
Yeah, well, I think the American public they've caught on to the mainstream media that they pretty much lie about everything. There's no truth in it. I think that's why you see mainstream papers, they're declining readership, and you see even mainstream TV, whether it's the national news or the local news, they're declining because people don't trust them anymore. And they've continued to tell us that the border doesn't matter, but we all know it is affecting us. It's affecting our kids with fentanyl overdoses. Every day we're losing, hundreds, if not thousands of kids across the country. We are being overrun, and the cost of that is both social and economic. And once they're here and you've got 10 million new people during the Biden administration, potentially by the time he's done, we all have to pay for that. We have to pay for the education, the healthcare. It's going to affect all of us economically, but it's also going to affect us because of the crime increases, the fact that we may have terrorists in our country. We very likely have terrorists in our country. And
Absolutely.
The Biden administration knows this. And yet the Biden administration is willing to trade our safety, security, and our economic future for their agenda of creating an environment where they control. We have a one-party system, and they've also managed to damage the Republican states economically.
Folks, we all have a heartfelt reason to support our blood pressure, right? In fact, more than half of the U.S. population would benefit from blood pressure support. How do I do that? Paired with a healthy lifestyle, the antioxidants in Super Beets are clinically shown to be nearly 2 times, listen to this, more effective at promoting normal blood pressure than a healthy lifestyle alone. And I just took mine this morning and I love it. I love the way it makes me feel. And more importantly, I love the fact that I'm doing something to help support my heart, to help support my blood pressure. My family has heart disease on my mother's side, and I would hate to leave this planet early and not do everything I can to be there for my children and for my husband and for my kids. The worst day of my life was when I lost my mom. And I know for all of you out there, you want to do the best you can to be healthy for your families. This is just one way that I found out. And I'm telling you, you will love Super Beets. You'll love the way they taste. You'll love the fact that they just fit into your schedule. You can put them in your purse, in your back pocket, in your jacket. You can take them with you anywhere you go. You guys know I travel everywhere and I have my Super Beets with me. Supporting healthy blood pressure comes with a bonus too. Super Beet Heart Chews support healthy circulation. So you not only get blood pressure support, but you also get productive, heart healthy energy without the crash. Double your potential with Super Beet Heart Chews. Get a free 30-day supply of Super Beets Heart Chews. And listen to this, 15% off your first order by going to getsuperbeets.com and using promo code Sara, S-A-R-A. That's getsuperbeets.com, code Sara, S-A-R-A. If you're enjoying today's show with A.G. Paxton, hit that subscribe button down below and subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Thank you. It really does make a difference. You know, how has President Biden undermined border security here in Texas and along other border states with Mexico?
He's done it several ways, and he started off day one by declaring basically that we're not going to deport anybody. We sued him over that, and we stopped that. But you know, he eliminated the very things that Trump put into place. All you have to do is look at the numbers, by the way, to see what immigration was, how much illegal immigration we had at the end of the Trump administration versus the beginning of the Biden administration, and then moving forward through the last almost 3 years. You see the numbers are dramatically increased, 400%. They got rid of Remain in Mexico, which was the loophole around asylum, which now is wide open. It's so open that everybody claims asylum, and basically stopped building the wall and invited everybody to don't worry about the Border Patrol. We're going to help you. You don't have to hide. You don't have to run. You know, the Border Patrol used to try to catch people, and they would try to hide. We don't hide anymore. They don't even try. They're looking. The cartels are bringing them to the Border Patrol and saying, "Hey, oh, we're over here." What kind of deal is that? That is not border security. That's called open borders, and the Biden administration has created that.
Exactly. I mean, I tell people this all the time. When I see groups coming across, and I'm in Eagle Pass or McAllen, wherever I'm at, La Jolla, and I see children and women walking, I say, oh, don't worry about it. Don't walk anymore. Right up the road, there's a couple of Border Patrol agents. Keep going that way. I mean, I feel like I'm the guide because I know they're coming in. We can't turn them back. I mean, I'm interviewing them and they'll say, where is Border Patrol? They're actually actively looking for them. And then Border Patrol tells me, look, what can we do? We have to just process them. We have to bring them in. We have to process them. And we're not even doing the checks that we need to be doing. And I say that because I'm speaking to sources in immigration and customs enforcement and Border Patrol. Why do you think the Biden administration has done this? This to me is the biggest question. I ask everyone this. Why are they keeping the border open?
Two reasons. One, they want the votes. They think that this will help them with votes in Republican states. So that's one reason. Second of all, and I think this is important to note, the Republican states have been, I mean, you moved to Texas for a reason, right? People are moving to Texas and Florida and Tennessee. Republican states, because why? They have opportunity. There's lower taxes, less regulation, better job opportunities. People are voting with their feet. And how do you change that if you're the Biden administration when you don't want Republican states to have more voting strength and more, electoral votes? How do you change that? Well, you make the Republican states less successful. And the way they're doing that is bringing in illegal immigrants that cause higher crime rates. That's a cost socially. And then we have to pay for all this. So economically, we're being impacted because we're having to pay for education now because we're required to do that, healthcare, and other costs associated with this illegal immigration. And so they're damaging us economically and making it less likely that we're going to be successful with our other policies of low taxes, less regulation.
I absolutely agree with you on that. Governor Greg Abbott's plan, and DeSantis did this as well, but to move migrants in buses across the country and to say, hey, if you want to be a sanctuary state, more power to you. Here you go, because the federal government is not doing its job. But heck, if it's going to if the whole burden is going to hang on the state of Texas, and he's been moving those migrants in buses across the states, New York, we've seen the reaction of Mayor Eric Adams and Governor Hochul. Do you think it's worked in raising the consciousness of America to this issue? Like it's actually exposed what's really going on, whereas the federal government was trying to hide this?
Well, look, I think the whole idea of busing, I'll be the first to say I didn't think it was a genius idea, but it turns out it is. It was a genius idea to highlight the hypocrisy of these sanctuary cities. Because if you'll remember, during the Trump administration, sanctuary cities came into being to complain about the fact that Trump was protecting the border. And so they criticized Trump, said, we'll take these people. Of course, they didn't have to worry about it because Trump was protecting the border, right? So they didn't really have a problem. Well, Shazam, they get what they want. The Biden administration opens the border, and suddenly they have a few thousand people in New York City and Chicago. Not a few thousand people a day like we do in Texas and Arizona and California, but no, a few thousand people total. And they're complaining about the cost of it. They're complaining about both the economic cost and the social cost of it. And it shows the hypocrisy. And then they start accusing Governor Abbott and Ron DeSantis and Ducey of like bad things because they're sending the immigrants that they said they wanted to their city. So it does highlight not just a little hypocrisy, but tremendous hypocrisy on the part of these Democratic mayors and, frankly, the Democratic Party.
I think so too. And I think it's because they felt the pressure from their constituents. All of a sudden, I'm in New York City. I'm at PS 133, one of the schools down there, and they've got an entire gymnasium not filled with women and children, which was surprising to me. Here's an elementary school. It's filled with men, with hundreds of men, military age males drinking and smoking outside a elementary school. And I'm thinking, how is this even possible that this would happen in America? And so I think parents that probably vote Democrat, I'm just guessing, all of a sudden woke up and said, well, wait a minute. My kid goes to school here. I'm a taxpayer. And now I've got a bunch of men sleeping in the gym. I don't know if these guys are criminals. I don't know if they're pedophiles. And you're putting them like just feet away from my kids. And I think that it was just such a brilliant move. I wasn't sure how it was going to work out either. I was kind of in the same boat you're in. Like, was this going to work? How is this going to play out? And it did. It exposed that hypocrisy. I saw it across the country. Let me ask you this. Right now, we've been watching, between Texas DPS and the difficult job that the Texas DPS has in monitoring the border and trying to, maneuver its resources, both for the constituents and for the people that they're basically, what would the word be, assisting, with crime and trying to help our communities here in the state of Texas, and then having to deal with the border, which is also aiding our communities in staying safe. And then that conflict between the federal level as well with Border Patrol. How do you resolve that issue in a state with so much complexity there? You got Border Patrol saying, well, we got to do it this way. And you have Texas DPS saying, well, wait a minute, you can't just let people walk into the state and just cross people's ranch lands and not have some kind of balance here. How do you balance those two out? Those two.
Well, first of all, I don't blame Border Patrol. They're being told by the Biden administration that they're not to do their jobs. Matter of fact, they're to do the opposite of what the law says, and that's a difficult position for Border Patrol. I've talked to many, just like you have, and they don't like it, but that's what they're being told by the Biden administration. Break the law every day, every hour, every minute, and that's what they're doing. So yeah, and DPS is in a difficult spot because, as you said, people want us to take over the National Guard and tell them to, I guess, shoot people. I don't see that as a reasonable option.
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
I do want to highlight a bill that was passed in the Texas Senate that the House has not passed yet in special session. It would allow us to allow the state to arrest people, DPS, for crossing the border illegally. And the reason I like that is because if the federal government's not going to do it, then we should be allowed to do it to protect our own people. It would probably violate this case called U.S. v. Arizona that was poorly decided by the Supreme Court, with Justice Roberts and Justice Kennedy joining 3 liberal judges to say Arizona can't pass their own laws to protect their citizens. I think that was wrongly decided. I think the consequences of that are being seen. And I want another shot at going up to the Supreme Court and hope that Roberts can say, okay, man, I screwed this up. It's causing a lot of bad that I'm making these states accept crime every day and the consequences of the federal government passing a law and saying, yeah, we passed the law, but we're not going to follow it. And so now you guys can't pass the law because we have the law that we're not following. So that can't be right. And so I'm hoping that the House, as bad as the leadership is, that they'll at least have some decency to pass this bill so that we can protect our our state.
When is that coming up for a vote? When do you know?
Well, the Senate's already passed it. The House is sitting on it right now. They've got a 30-day session, which I don't know what days they start, somewhere at the beginning of October. So they probably have, say, 20 days, maybe 15 days to pass it. Their level of non-caring about this issue has been great over the last several years since Dade Phelan took over. But I'm hoping that the consequences of not doing it will so overwhelm even Dade Phelan that they'll pass this bill. It's already there. It's sitting there waiting for just a vote. And so far, the House will not vote on it, just like they won't vote on other important issues related to election integrity and other border issues.
That's just incredible to me. Dave Phelan, you need to do your job. You need to pass this because the people of Texas and the people of the United States of America cannot handle this anymore. I mean, what are you going to say to a mother who loses her child because, you allowed someone to come into this country with bringing in fentanyl, or somebody who is a criminal, or somebody that hasn't had a background check? And I think even worse, and I'm going to let you address this before we have to get off, Attorney General, is the fact now that we are under a very serious threat level. I believe we've been under that threat level for years, but especially with what's happened to our allies in Israel and across the globe, you can see right now that our adversaries are taking advantage of this wide open border that our government has allowed to be open. And I believe even more so, I will say it, I absolutely 100% believe, based on the sources that I've spoken to, that there are terrorists in our nation, possible sleeper cells. I think that's why the FBI is so wrapped up now in we've got to figure out what's going on. If you see something, say something, because it's not about domestic extremism and people in Loudoun County who were fighting the school board. It's about real terrorists that will put off real bombs and kill Americans.
Well, as you know, the Biden administration, the Department of Justice, has been focused on going after parents who would speak out about critical race theory or something like that instead of protecting our border. And the reality is, we already know that 240 terrorists have been arrested coming in, 1.5 million gotaways that we don't even know who they are. The odds of there being no terrorists coming across our border are, it's impossible. Statistically, we have terrorists in our country, probably many, because the Biden administration has not taken seriously that threat. So there's no doubt in my mind that somewhere down the road, the Biden administration, the consequences will come to roost, and we are going to have some type of terrorist attack where people are going to be hurt and potentially die. And that's going to be on the blood's going to be on the Biden administration's hands. Not that you can prevent every terrorist attack, but you should at least try to protect your border, do what you can. And then if you have a terrorist attack, you address what you missed. But in this case, it's wide open. So there's no doubt in my mind that you're right, that we have terrorists in our country that were basically invited here and cross the border illegally, and there's no problem with that.
And the House in Texas certainly needs to pay attention too, because they have the power to make a difference right now and send a message to, sadly, to the people that are trying to come in here as well, but to all of the human trafficking organizations and the drug cartels and the Biden administration and all the bad players that are using weaponized migration to target our country, to send a clear message that we will not accept that anymore. And it's just shocking to me that we have Republicans in the Texas House that will not pass that law. And I think you do need to take that to the Supreme Court if it does pass and anyone challenges it. Can you take it on a different premise than what originally happened in Arizona and maybe tackle it that way with the Supreme Court?
Well, I mean, that case is what prevents the states from protecting themselves. So that's the case that we need to overturn. And the way to overturn that is for the legislature to pass a bill like this that goes in direct conflict with that case, and let the federal government sue us. Now, I'm not even sure they will sue us because they don't want to take that case up, because I think they could lose and should lose. So I don't even know if they'd actually stop us, but if they did, it would be our opportunity that I've looked forward to taking all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. And I think we would get to the Supreme Court, because I think we'd win all the way up, and I think the Department of Justice would appeal it to the U.S. Supreme Court, and we'd be going up on a winning note.
This is the reason why you have been so effective as an attorney general. I have one more question for you, and then I'm going to leave the last up to you to make whatever statement you want. But one of the issues I know a lot of people bring up to me is that Texas, some of the major cities, Houston, we've seen that in Houston and in some areas, Austin, a spike in crime. A lot of this is due to woke prosecutors, district attorneys that don't want to impose the law on people who commit crimes. Are we facing that in Texas? Is that one of the reasons why you're saying, like, look, our state could go blue? We need to fight this to keep this state red, because we're already seeing it in some of our major cities.
Yeah, you've hit on one of the, if not the most important topic, I'd say number one or two, but I think it's the most important topic. And that is George Soros came in here and he went to the big cities and he got his DAs elected in Travis County, right next to where you are, which is Austin, Harris County, which is Houston, Dallas County, which is Dallas, obviously, Barrett County, which is San Antonio. He got his DAs elected. In other words, there were DAs there that were Democrats, clearly, but they were still doing their jobs prosecuting. I knew some of them. I worked with some of them. They referred cases to us. Well, George Soros changed that. Now we've got DAs that don't prosecute. And I think there's a big reason he did that. And this is the topic that I wanted to finish with anyway. The Court of Criminal Appeals then came in. There are 9 members of the Court of Criminal Appeals. That is our Supreme Court on criminal matters. They came in and suddenly, unexpectedly, voted 8-1, Kevin Urey being the only reasonable human being on that court, to strike down our statute that was passed in 1951 directing the Attorney General to prosecute voter fraud. So what does that mean? That means now only the local DAs can prosecute voter fraud. Guess what? The Court of Criminal Appeals knows that there are DAs in these big counties that will not prosecute voter fraud, which means that in the big counties where there are lots of votes, we could have a lot of voter fraud, changing this state overnight. And once that happens, I don't know if we ever get it back, because the laws will never be fixed. So I've tried to get the House and the Senate to pass a law to reauthorize me to prosecute voter fraud. The House refused to do it. The Senate did it during the last session. The House refused to do it, saying they didn't have time to deal with that issue. So that tells you where the House is at. And we now have a Court of Criminal Appeals that they struck down this statute. Their argument was that the Attorney General doesn't have the authority to prosecute, to go into court, that because of separation of powers, because I'm in the executive branch, I'm not allowed to go into court on any case. If that's true, we've had it wrong since the founding of this country. Every Attorney General in the country is violating the Constitution, and the founders didn't know it. They didn't figure that out. So we have to change the Court of Criminal Appeals in March. We've got 3 members up. I'm hoping we'll have 3 people running against those 3 members. The most important elections coming up are the primaries in March for the House, knocking out some of these Republicans that went the wrong way. And then second, the Court of Criminal Appeals, we should have 3 candidates, and we have to change that court so that I can prosecute voter fraud, or we will lose this state and you'll be trying to figure out where you're going next.
Oh gosh, no, we've got to do that. I cannot move anymore. It will just... This is my favorite state. I can't move. I've got to fight for it. You got to let me know what I need to do. And I think this is so important, because now I just have to ask one quick follow-up. Is this the reason why they're going after you? Is this the reason why there is this vehement power, like this machine going after you and making life almost impossible? I mean, for not only for Texans, but I think in the country, I think that there are people protecting their power here.
I think, yeah, absolutely. And this is the reason I have a case still going, a criminal case where they've sent me out of my own county, and the Court of Criminal Appeals ruled that this was a good decision, that I should be sent out of my own county, which has never happened before in the history of the state, to send a criminal trial outside of your own county to a more liberal county where there are obviously more liberal judges and more liberal jurors. That, yes, absolutely, the Court of Criminal Appeals, I think, is involved in making sure that the worst possible thing happens to me, because I'm speaking out about what they did, and I'm convinced that those members that voted for this have some connection to George Soros, just like the DAs do. And if they get control of my job, which they were trying to do, there is no way to fight the voter fraud issue, because now George Soros has the DAs. He has the Court of Criminal Appeals that control all the legal issues related to voter fraud. And guess what? Then if they beat me, where do you fight? They've taken out all 3 areas where you could fight voter fraud.
Texans, Americans, all of you out there that are listening to the Attorney General right now, don't be blindsided by the lies that you see in the mainstream media. Listen to what he's saying. It's a fact. This is why they are fighting, why they're taking positions of power with district attorneys, why Soros has invested so much money. And by the way, this is not conspiratorial theories. Just pick up the LA Times, look it up. Put George Soros, DAs, even the LA Times has written about it, and they're to the left. So you need to be listening to these warnings. And Attorney General, just let me know what I need to do to help get the word out, to work with you to ensure that we remove those people from office and that we put people in office that are actually going to care about Texans and this nation. Thank you so much for being on the show. You've got to come back. We've got to do more of this, and we've got to just focus on voter fraud the next one.
Between now and March, the primaries, I want to talk to you a lot about the House members that we need to be, and I'll give you more specifics on that. And once we have our candidates for Court of Criminal Appeals, I want to have them on and I want them to talk to you and tell you why these may be the most important races in the country.
Wow. Thank you so much. I look forward to it. I want them on the show. Thank you so much, Attorney General Ken Paxton, for joining the show today. Folks, let's support America First patriots who are not afraid to stand up to rhinos and the radical left. We need to do that. I will keep you updated on everything that is happening in Texas, because by God, it's not just Texas that we need to be worried about. It's so many other states in our union that are being threatened by leftist radical Marxists. This isn't the old Democrats, guys. This is something completely new, run by machines like George Soros and others who want to transform our nation into something that we will not recognize when we wake up 10 years from now. Let's not let them do that. We are the warriors on the front line of our country. Please make sure you are subscribed to the Sara Carter Show here on your favorite podcast app. It really does help us. And I want you to follow me on Truth at Sara Carter Official, on X at Sara Carter DC, and on Instagram at SCarterDC. God bless you. God bless our great nation. Pray for peace. And God bless the state of Israel. And God bless every single state in our union. We need those prayers, folks, because where Texas goes, so does the rest of our nation.